Well, good afternoon folks. This is a video on how to change the front and rear brake pads on the Interceptor. I know it's probably been done before, I'm sure it has, but I'm doing it anyway. This is how I did it. This is based on a recommendation by Mike Reddy. I'm reticent to use the word a subscriber because it sounds a bit pretentious really on my little channel. Let's say that Mike has subscribed to my little channel, and I spoke to him the other night on the phone and he recommended these. He put them on for his bike for its MOT and was complimented by the MOT man to say, wow, you've got great brakes. Now, I've never noticed that on my bike, so he swears by these, so I've gone ahead. Don't say I don't listen, Mike. Done it. So these were 42 quid for the front and rear from the same seller on eBay. As you can see, they are sintered metal. I would say sintered bronze possibly. They obviously look a lot nicer than the ones that you'll see later on in the video that I remove. They obviously have a hard life. So that's the full set. On the left of the front for the twin pot calipers. I'm sorry, caliper singular. And the right hand side ones are for the rear brakes. It's interesting to see how much more stopping power in terms of surface area of the pads themselves is on the front actually. So that is the friction side of the new pads, and this next shot shows the back of them. Now I suspect that the original brake pads that come with the Royal Enfield are probably not that good, based on the quality of other parts on the bike. Now replaced. So I think this is a very good move to do. Now to do the front brake, the brake caliper and the carrier they're held on by two, in my case, stainless hex bolts, flange bolts. There. They've been on now for 18 months, 2 years. I know people say, oh, stainless steel will snap. No, they don't. My engine bolts are stainless steel. All the bolts are, as I've covered in a previous video. I don't think I've got any ferrous nuts and fasteners and bolts on the bike at all, so they're absolutely safe. Those, the big hefty stainless steel nut bolts. So here is the next shot showing my trusty Halford socket set. Yes, look at it. It's not snap-on, it's not fancy. I bought it 40 years ago from Halfords, and it was made in Malaysia. I don't think anything's made in Malaysia now, is it? And so it's still going strong, apart from a few sockets I've had to replace over the years. So you just undo those two bolts, and then the entire caliper with the carrier will come straight off the fork. As you can see there, twin pot front caliper, and you've got the two bolt holes in the aluminium carrier there. So you take the whole lot off. Now in my case, I replaced the brake pad retaining pins with stainless steel because I don't like looking at rusty manky ones, and I just think it's better if they're not corroded, and probably safer actually. So that's the old brake pads in. Now that's a stainless steel pin, believe it or not, but you'll see it later when I've cleaned it. These are produced, I did a video on it, a previous video on replacing those. They're actually made for a BMW, so they are in fact brake caliper pins, and as I say, if you look at my previous videos you'll see how I replace those. Now all it's a case of doing to get at those brake pads is you get some long nose pliers and you pull up that bent over looking split pin. Now that is how it is on the bike. That bent bit goes over the shoulder of the caliper. It's important that when it's put back it goes back in the same way. You don't want that the wrong way around and interfering with the actual brake pad itself, the round bit that goes on the pin there. It has to go back on that way. Now I'm using a sharpened progler that I made from a screwdriver, and what you have to do is you put that end of it onto the pin and you tap it, and it doesn't take a lot of force, just a bit of a tap with a mallet or a hammer or whatever, on the end of that little progler there, and what that will do, it will force the pin out of the other side of the caliper. And the pin itself, as you'll see in this next photo, it has like a softer metal collar on it, as well as having a hole in the middle for the circlip. So this next shot shows the BMW stainless pin, and you can see it's got a softer metal collar which fits round. Now when I bought those pins, they didn't come with that collar. That collar is off the original brake pins, and it's possible to just put a blade of a screwdriver in the edge of it. There's a gap there, as you can see in the photo, and you can prise it just enough to get it off, and then you can put it back on again. The only function of it, it's not a bearing surface or anything, it's just really to stop the brake pin from chattering about in the caliper itself. This next shot shows the caliper with the brake pads removed. They just simply pull straight out after that once you've removed the pin. So as you can see in this picture, I've given it a bit of a clean. There's a lot of brake pad dust in there. You can see the twin pot calipers. The square thing is a spring, as you might be familiar with, which stops the brake pads from chattering. I don't mean talking to each other, I mean making a chattering sound. So basically that's pushing them. So when you put the new pads in, it's a question of locating the ends of the pads onto a shoulder, which you'll see has got a little chromed metal cover on it. So the other end of the brake pad themselves, the one without the hole in, goes onto that shoulder. There's another shot of the caliper. If you look to the left of that photo there, you'll see it's a bit dirty looking at that stage. There is the little shoulder there. It's purely to allow the brake pads to slide up and down without moving up and down on aluminium, the cast aluminium of the caliper itself. And if you've done brakes before, you'll be familiar with that anyway. It's clamped in there. Mine didn't fall out, which they do on some of these old classic bikes, and you just basically push against that spring to line up the holes for the pin to go through. This next shot shows the original brake pad, and they all had this. There's fibres there. Looks like it's got wearing a little toupee sticking out the top there. I did wonder if I'd gone over something in the bike, but it's not. I found it on the rear brake pads as well, these little tufts of fibre. I've never seen that before on brake pads, to be honest, and as you can see from that close-up, they're not in great condition, the actual friction surfaces. Now, this next photo shows both of the front brake pads complete with their little wisps of hair. Now to me, I don't think they're very good. If you look at that top brake pad, the oblong in the middle, right hand side middle there's a piece missing out of it as well. And they do look like they've had a bit of a hard life. And I don't see why, because I've not been out in the rain particularly, and salt and things like that. The next shot shows the back of the brake pads, the old brake pads. And as you can see, I think the picture says it all really. There's something corrosion going on, and they don't look great, do they, really? So I think it's I don't know whether the new ones will end up like that. I'll find out. So what you do is you take your brake pads out by removing the split pin and tapping out the brake pin. This next photo shows, wait for it, putting the new pads in. Now all I'm doing with my thumb there is pushing against that spring that's underneath it, that sort of bladed spring that I pointed out earlier. And you'll see on the left hand side they're firmly engaged in that metal shoulder, which, as I said before, stops the aluminium of the caliper wearing as the brake pads move in and out. So I'm pushing down with my thumb there in order to line up the holes on the right hand side of the picture with the pinholes of the actual caliper itself. Then it's just a case of putting the pin, stainless pin in my case, back through the holes. And you can see there, I've cleaned the pin up just with a bit of chrome cleaner actually, and I've put the split pin back in, and you'll see that, as I said before, it's important that that spring be orientated correctly so that the bent over bit is over the caliper, not the brake pad, because it will interfere with the brake pad moving. So that's when the pin is back in. While you've got the caliper off, it's worth cleaning things. I'm a bit wary about using carb cleaner, and you can use brake cleaner and spray to get all the old dust off. I just wiped it off with a duster. I've had some unfortunate experiences using carb cleaner and brake cleaner where it starts dissolving various plastics, as I found out on my laser printer at home the other day, cleaning it with carb cleaner, and it made it go all soft. So I'm a bit wary. I just use a duster, and then it's a case of putting the caliper back on the bike. Now you might find that if you've got severe wear on your old brake pads, you can push the pistons back, the twin pot pistons in that front caliper. Once you've got the new pads in, you can just basically, you can, if you're careful, use a screwdriver or a bladed instrument of some sort to just push those pots back, and just so that you can get the extra space. In my case, it went straight back on. I didn't need to do anything else. I gave it a little push, but nothing much, and it's just slots straight back on. There it is, in place. I put my two stainless hex bolts, flange bolts, back in. As you can see on that photo, I've got stainless bleed nipple, and I've also replaced all the banjos on the bike. So if you look on the right hand side of that brake banjo, you'll see again it's not all cruddy, and it's not got any rust on it. It's part of my thing. I just like to replace ferrous bits. I don't like to see rust if I can avoid it. So that's the front brake, dead easy. Now the back brake's even easier actually. You don't even need to take the caliper off. So here is a shot of the rear brake caliper. Now as you can see, the pin, it's exactly the same principle as at the front, and the pins are identical. They do come in, you can buy them in pairs, which is what I did, got it on eBay. You'll see again the bent over elbowy bit. That's how it should sit on both calipers. You know, make sure that that shoulder is over that side, not the brake pad. Then it's a case of pulling the pin out, long nose pliers, and as you can see here in this next photo, there's my progler again, and you just give it a gentle tap. It shouldn't be too hard to remove, so just a gentle tap on the end of that screw, progler that I made. Anything will do it really, thin bar or whatever, you know, thin rod. You want something that you can actually tap. Again, you can see the state of the rear brake pads just by the the edges of them. Really, they're quite horrible, really. So, having tapped it out, this next photo then shows removing the brake pads. You don't even need to take the caliper off the bike. So all you've got to do is pull the pin out, and again, it's got the soft metal shoulder on it, which, as I say, if you buy stainless pins, you'll have to transfer it from one to the other. I think you can even buy them new, actually, those, but it will prise open and then it will go back on again. This next shot after this one shows the pin out of the bike. As you'll see in a few seconds, the pin itself, I've cleaned it up again. I don't want to put grease on it. I don't want any lubricant anywhere near the discs, thank you. So there it is, another one. Now when I bought those pins, I wanted to use the original clips, spring clips in them, and BMW use a thinner one. So what I did with that is to drill it out. I just used a new drill bit, just slightly bigger than the BMW ones. If you look in my previous video, I'll say which bike it's from. I can't remember, to be honest, but I just drilled it out because I wanted to use the original spring clips. Now all you do then is, having got that pin out, It's just then a case of, as you'll see in this next picture, get a pair of long nose pliers, and the brake pads just pull out. Again, it's the same principle as the front brake caliper. You've got a shoulder on the front of that caliper, with a little plate over it to stop it wearing. And it's very important that the brake pads, with these rear ones, when they're put back in, that shoulder lines up properly. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So get a pair of long nose pliers and just pull the brake pad out like that. Now you can see from the surface on that, something's going on, isn't it? I mean, it's got full of grooves, which, you know, it's almost, I've not gone over grit or sand or something like that. I've done lots of other calipers before and lots of other brake pads, but to me that doesn't look very good as an indication of the quality of the pad itself. I know they do get scored, but I personally, I don't know what other people think, I'm sure you'll tell me, hopefully. To me, that seems a bit excessive. There's bits missing on it, look. That one hasn't got a moustache like the other one had, but here we go. So, you slide in the new pads, and all you've got to do is just push them in, basically. The left-hand one goes straight in. The right-hand one is slightly trickier. It's not difficult. The way to do the right-hand one is to put it in with the back end down a bit, as I'll show in another photo that's coming up in a minute. So what you do is you slide in the first one on the left, and you can check on the left-hand side of the caliper that it's on the shoulder of the caliper. And the right hand one, I found it easier just to sort of lower the back end of it a bit and push it in and then sort of lift it up to line up the holes. So if you look at that photo there, you'll see the left hand pad is in. That's gone straight in. The right hand one, as I say, what you've got to do is you've got to lower the back end of it a bit and then get the first bit of the shoulder to engage at an angle, and then just lift the back up so the hole lines up. I'll show you here in this next photo. If you just bear with me. Here it comes. Right, so there it is, look. Now if you look at that shot, you can see the brake pad, you can see the metal insert that's clipped onto the caliper to stop wear, and you'll see that shoulder of the pad itself is properly engaged there. In fact, it's virtually impossible to line up the rear holes for the pin to go through without it being in the correct position, but I think with it being brakes, you can't be too careful, so you ought to be checking that has gone into where it's supposed to go, as per that photo. And that's the right hand side one, actually. Yeah, that's the right hand side one, because the pipe's on it. This next photo shows what I've just been waffling on about, which is putting it in at an angle. Ooh, matron. There we go, yeah. So you put it in like that. So the left hand one's gone straight in. There's that slightly lower with my grubby, dirty fingers. I'm not one of these that can wear neoprene gloves. You know when you see these videos of people doing things to bikes and cars and things, and they're wearing sort of blue gloves all the time. My own view is that the state of my hands, it's not fair to the gloves. It's just easier. I just don't. I've never used them. I've tried and they just break and fall off, and then you get all sweaty fingers and everything. So I don't wear blue gloves. As you can see, I'm not exactly well manicured. But there you go. It's working men's hands, that. So here's this next shot showing the angled approach. So you can see the top pinhole there on the nearest to you. That's the one where the stainless steel pin will go through. So what I've done there is to push the front edge of that brake pad forward, got the shoulder of the brake pad to go onto the caliper, complete with its metal anti-wear bit, and by doing that you then just pull it upwards. It sounds difficult, it's not. You just want to make sure it's engaged properly at the front. So you just pull up that back end and then you put the pin back in, and obviously the circlip. So this next photo shows the correct positioning. That's incorrect there. I've done that one on purpose, so that is incorrect, that, for the right hand side brake pad. That's what may happen if you don't put it in at an angle. It'll butt up against it and then you'll drive yourself mad trying to get the pinholes to line up, which they probably won't. And even if you succeeded in doing it, you probably have some dreadful incident occur because your brake pads aren't on properly. So that is the incorrect position, which I did on purpose. I did, honestly. I've done it on purpose like that. This next photo shows the shoulder in the correct position. As I said, I don't think you can line them up anyway, but you just want to make sure it's sitting where it should, obviously. And there it is, look. So you can see it's nicely lined up where it's supposed to be. You'll see that spring clip metal thing just below that circular bit in the middle. That's the anti-wear bit. Again, I've known people grease them, and I just don't like the idea of it. I think they function perfectly well if they're clean. I think if the pins are clean, there's no corrosion on them, especially if they're stainless, obviously. I think that's the way to go. I don't want grease anywhere near pads. You just don't know where it goes, do you, once it gets warm and a bit of wind. So this next photo shows the rear brake pads now installed. And there's the pin about to be plonked in. So that is how it should look. And then obviously you tap the pin down, or press it down, and what it does, it goes between, as you can see, between the caliper and the pad. So you've got to tap that pin in. When you tap your pin back in, you want to make sure that the hole, you've tapped it in enough for the hole to appear on this near side of the caliper there, so it can take the split pin. Once it's in, you can put the split pin partially in and turn it round and get its right orientation for putting that shoulder back, that bent bit back onto the shoulder of the caliper. And here we are, is another shot of it now done with the pin back in. You can see those lovely new sintered pads waiting to break. I don't mean malfunction, obviously. Waiting to stop that bike. Now, I've been out on it, and Mike, you're 100% right. I mean, it's vastly, vastly better. There's no doubt about it. The brakes are, I don't just feel, you know, when you've got something that's good and you fit it and you know that it's right, well, that's what they're like. And the braking is without a shadow of a doubt better. I've never succeeded in locking the rear wheel of my bike. I know it's got ABS on it, obviously, but I've never been able to actually get the rear wheel to operate the ABS, simply because I couldn't get enough brake force to do it. But having taken it out today, yes, it's perfectly possible, you know, if you really put your mind to it, plenty of pressure on the brake, and I managed to get the ABS to engage. First time ever since I've had the bike. Now this next shot shows the rear caliper. That's it back on the bike. I'm hoping that the rounded bits of the brake pads stay looking like that, because I think it looks really nice. And certainly the stainless pins, in my opinion, they're a good idea, because you don't get corrosion. I think if you get pitting on ferrous ones, you know, ones that can rust, I think that would impede the pads possibly moving up and down properly. So, plus it looks good, especially on the rear caliper, because you can see it. The other thing that's important is obviously when you've done the brakes, especially on the front one, I said I pushed the pistons back in, you obviously have to pump the front brake and the rear brake to make sure that the pads have engaged. You know, I know you're not daft, everybody, but you don't just do this and then go out on your bike, because there wasn't the front brake for 3 pumps when I changed the pads, because I'd pushed the pistons back a bit. So just make sure it all works properly. Now these are shots of the old pads, which will end up going straight into my scrap bin. I don't know what other people think. I mean, obviously people who've done this job and replaced the pads before I've got round to doing it. I don't know, did you find yours are like that? I think they're awful. The final shot of the brake pad horror show. So that is the front ones. And if you look at the right hand side brake pad at the top, you'll see that the shoulder bit I was talking about that needs to engage on the friction proof metal thingy. That's a technical term. So I don't know if they're branded. It says Brembo on them. I don't know. But anyway, the job's done. Thank you, Mike, for your recommendation. I'm pleased I did it. It took me no more than not even half an hour. The brake caliper at the back is just so easy to do, as long as you bend that one, you know, droop the one down on the right hand side. And there it is, a shot of my bike taken today following doing the brake job. And you'll notice I don't have any rear view mirrors. No, because I removed them today. And I'll be making a video in the next few days, probably at the weekend actually, based on a recommendation from Mr. Len Hartley. Hello, Len. Len gave me an excellent recommendation to replace the mirrors, and I'll not steal my own thunder by talking about them too much now, but the mirrors that are on the bike, the standard ones, I think everybody knows what they're like. I've removed them pending another video at the weekend. So it's a nice day. I'll be taking the bike out again to test out those fantastic brakes. Thanks again, Mike. And I'll be posting a video probably on Saturday, Sunday. Operation Mirrors. In the meantime, if you're out on your bikes, you know what I'm going to say. Take care and keep it shiny side up, as they say. I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.